Do you ever think about what heaven is like? Like really think about what happens next. I think we all do. From time to time at different points in our life, especially when we exist on the margins of this life. When we feel like our time on this earth is so quickly dwindling down. When we feel like our time is about to expire. We think about it. And I'll admit that I never really thought about it until I was a young boy and my uncle died. And as that young boy, I never really thought about what was next. I never really contemplated that this life ultimately ends one day until the moment that my uncle died. And when my Uncle Denny died, I remember being perplexed. I just didn't understand. I remember just being in this daze at his funeral, All these people would come up to me and they'd shake my hand, and I'd sit there and wonder, why is this person here? And who is this person? And why are they shaking my hand and telling me that they're so sorry? I didn't understand that Uncle Denny was never coming back. But the thing I remember most vividly about his funeral was a song that played in the middle of that service. And it was a song I Can Only Imagine. And the song still chokes me up to this day whenever I hear it. And the words say, I can only imagine what it will be like. When I walk by your side, I can only imagine what my eyes would see when your face is before me. I can only imagine. Surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? Will I dance for you, Jesus, or in awe of you be still? Will I stand in your presence, or will I fall on my knees? Will I sing hallelujah? Will I be able to speak at all? I can only imagine. Despite my love of music and my love of worship all of these years, I've never been able to play that song except for a 30-second clip once that I sent to my mom. You may ask, why 30 seconds? Well, 30 seconds is all I can make it through without bawling. Music transports us to another time and another place, and it transforms the spirit. And as I sat in those pews at that funeral, I was transported to a new realm of questions. I've wondered for the first time in my life what heaven was like. I wondered if my Uncle Denny was up there at the best fishing holes, catching the bass and the catfish that he loved so much. And I wondered if I'd get to go visit someday. And if, when we met in heaven, he'd recognize me from that little boy that I was when he knew me to the man that I've become. And I'm sure that you've wondered too, as you've lost people that you've loved and cherished, as you've come to the margin of this life and truly contemplated your existence. I'm sure that you've dreamed and ultimately planned what this next stage of life will ultimately be. The reward that's waiting for us, right? The reward that's promised to us, this heavenly gift, the one that we've worked so hard for, the one that we deserve. Or do we deserve it? Our text today is from Mark, and he presents an interesting picture of what we actually deserve. And this text comes one chapter before Jesus is to make his triumphant entry into Jerusalem. And it says, James and John, Zebedee's sons, came up to him. Teacher, we have something we want you to do for us. What is it? I'll see if I can do it. And they say, arrange it so that we will be awarded the highest places of honor in your glory, one of us at your right and the other at your left. And Jesus said, you have no idea what you're asking. Are you capable of drinking the cup that I drink, of being baptized into the baptism I'm about to be plunged into? And they said, sure. Why not? And Jesus said, come to think of it, you will drink the drink that I drink and be baptized in my baptism. But as to awarding places of honor, that's not my business. There are other arrangements for that. And when the other 10 heard of this conversation, they lost their tempers with James and John. And Jesus got them together to settle things down. You've observed how godless rulers throw their weight around, he said. And when people get a little power, how quickly it goes to their heads. And it's not going to be that way with you. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. That is what the Son of Man has done. He's come to serve and not be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage. You know, our culture is so reward-centric. It's all about the rewards that we're going to receive. And I wonder if that culture has somehow corrupted and tainted our spirits. Before we agree to anything, what's the first thing that we do? Well, what am I going to get out of it? Before I commit to anything, I need to first see what's in it for me. And it's hard not to do that, right? As our availability and our access to things have multiplied, so too have the choices that we have to make in this life. So many choices in any given moment. When we were kids, the choices were slim, right? You either play baseball or you play soccer, right? You play basketball or you do wrestling. You want to be in this club or you want to be in that club. That's it. Those are the choices. But my friends, now it's a whole other thing, right? Do you want to play baseball, or do you want to play soccer, or do you want to do off-season football, or off-season basketball, or taekwondo, or jiu-jitsu, or AV club, or FFA, or do you want to go to youth group, or ballet, or programming club, or gaming club, or track, or the list goes on and on and on and on. So many choices all the time, and that's just our children. Think about all the choices that you have to face every single day. It's overwhelming. So many choices all of the time. And with all of those choices, we have to make decisions. We just have to. And if you're a reasonable person like me, in order to make a decision, what do you have to do? You have to make a pros and cons list, right? For every single option. Okay, that part's not real, but if we really think about it, it feels that way sometimes, right? Like we really have to weigh our options. I want you to raise your hand if you've ever been overwhelmed in this life. It's real, right? Of course you have. And I also want you to raise your hand if you've ever chosen something based on what you'll get from it, on what will benefit you the most in this life. That's the rub there, huh? We all have. It's a natural human default. And as a matter of fact, it's not just humans, right? It's animals, right? When you think of large predators, it's their natural instinct not to exert energy unless there's a reward of food on the other side. But here's the thing. That's not how faith works, is it? It's most certainly not how God works. And it's 100% not how heaven works. James and John found out the hard way in this text. They've been serving side by side with Jesus for quite some time, and they felt like it was finally time that they see how much retirement they'd racked up in that pension plan. And so they asked Jesus to set it up for them in heaven. Jesus, you know us. We were among the first, right? It's us. Buddy, oh pal, it's us. When we get to heaven, can I be at the right and my brother at the left? Can we have the most important seats at the feast? Because you know us. And Jesus, without blinking, he said, are you crazy? Are you crazy? And they looked at each other and they said, are we crazy? Well, no. We've been with you the whole time. We were among the first, and we worked up this pros and cons list right here. And right here on the pros side, it says get to celebrate in heaven with Jesus, seated at the right and left. It's right here on the pros and cons list. But then Jesus says this. He says, you have no idea what you're asking. Are you capable of drinking the cup that I drink, of being baptized in the baptism that I'm about to be plunged into? And what did James and John say? They say, cool. Why not? Of course we are. And it's at that moment, that very moment, with that juvenile answer, that Jesus knew they weren't ready, that they didn't understand. And how did he know that? Well, my friends, we have to understand what Jesus is asking here. He's asking James and John, are they prepared to endure what's about to happen? Are they prepared to die upon that cross right next to Jesus? And without thinking and without hesitation, without understanding the true sacrifice, James and John say, yes. But had they understood what Jesus was really asking, do you think they would have been jumping up and down and saying yes? Well, my friends, I don't think so. And I think if we were presented with the same question, I think our answer would be much more calculated than theirs. But we have to understand where they are and their thinking and their understanding. All they've seen is glory. All they've seen is the miracles that Jesus has performed. All they've seen is the transfiguration. They've seen the celebration and the glory. Every time Jesus moves from place to place, they've seen the crowds and all of the people. They've seen the adoration and all of the love. And for that, for the glory, they are all in. You have to understand that. My friends, with each passing day, I see more and more of James and John. I see people that are all in on this Christian thing, as long as it looks like a celebration. As long as worship and church looks like a party and it's all fun and it's all weddings and celebration, people are all in. As long as it looks like glory. We're all in on this Christian thing as long as it supports our political ideas, as long as it supports our cultural desires, as long as it supports the way that we choose to live our lives and the choices that we make in these lives. But what happens the moment that it doesn't? My friends, what happens the moment that faith doesn't equal glory? What happens the moment that praise doesn't equal power? And what happens the moment that God requires? Hear that word. Requires a sacrifice. My friends, I don't blame you for being like James and John. I don't. Because it's so much easier than that call that's on our lives to sacrifice, to do the hard work. It's so much easier to spend our times, all of these moments in our lives, thinking about the glory, thinking about the celebration that we're going to have in heaven with Jesus and God. It's so much easier to think and dream and plan about the reward that awaits us. But it's harder to understand. It's harder to realize that all of that comes on the back of Jesus, on the love of Jesus, not by anything we've ever done. You know, it's easy to be here in this room and in this celebratory moment, right? When we're eating and we're having dinners and chatting, when we're having weddings and we're exuding love and rejoicing, it's easy. But it's hard to be here when we're doing the hard work of ministry, when we're expanding our spirits and doing the soul repair that's necessary to live the life that God has called us to live. The truth is, the glory that we seek is only found in sacrifice. The two do not exist without the other. And that's the image of Jesus, right? And it's in those footsteps that we follow, these slow and arduous steps, one foot in front of the other, step after step after step. Whoever wants to be great must become a servant. Whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not be served, and then to give away his life in exchange for many who are held hostage. And I don't know where you are in your journey of life. I don't know the things that are holding you hostage in this life, but I do know this. I know that God loves you. And I know that I love you. And I know that if you're willing to trust God and truly do the work, that you'll find real power in this life. Because through surrender, we find freedom. And in freedom, there is love, and in love, there is, and there shall always be God. Thanks be to God.
These are your talks, Tatum. This is the hope of God set free. These are your talks, it's